Anakin.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to a Star Wars custom, and today we're gonna be taking a special look at trying to make a Darth Vader from the Kenobi series in his Bacta tank, Bath Time Vader as I like to call him. I saw this model on Instagram. The creator I saw it from, his name is SW3D Patreon over on Instagram. But I don't know what his actual account name is, but that's what he is on Instagram. That's where I found this model, and that's where I got everything I'll be using today. I did have to print the bottom base in 2 pieces, which was not ideal because I had to try to line those up and glue those together later, but my printer wasn't big enough to do the bottom base all in one print, and I really wanted to use a base this big so it'd look more like a display piece, because he had like a large piece and a small piece for the bottom base and top base. The large was too big, and then the small looked like nothing almost. It was really small, so I wanted really a medium, so I had to do a lot of alterations to this one. But you can see here I was trying to line everything up. Those floor grates were not lining up at all, so I glued everything together I could, and then went back with my Dremel and kind of cleaned up the inside a little bit, and I'll just print the floor grates separately. But for gluing it together, I just used some Gorilla Glue. I made sure to sand. That way the pieces will stick together better. So I made sure to do some rough sanding where I was going to be gluing. But these top pieces I could glue in one piece, so they turned out fine. They looked really good, and I just had to sand down the top smooth where all the supports were. I started using a blow dryer for supports as well. I haven't really done that much, but it works out really well. So I would suggest that if you have a piece, especially this big. But I just used some flat black for the primer. And for this top cover, this one I'm glued to the very top later. I just printed this off flat, and then I used some Bondo spot putty, what people use to like smooth out helmets and stuff. I just put a thin layer on that and this floor grate I printed. I put a thin layer on the floor grate and the top piece, and when that was drying, I just took my finger, I just put on some latex gloves and took my finger and just kind of dabbed at it for a while, and that added some kind of texture to this that kind of matched the base pretty well. So here's the base and the top plate all primed black. You can see those seam lines where I had glued it. Just trying to fill those in with some super glue and let that dry, and it did a pretty good job. I don't think I really touched these up too much after this. I think this was fine, and once I got everything painted, it was really hard to notice it unless you're really looking for it. But for right now, we're just going to hit everything with this kind of gunmetal color. It's from Citadel, and this is my favorite metallic silver to go with. Or like I said, it's more gunmetal than silver, but it's one of my favorite metallic paints. So I always try to use Citadel for metallics. So here it is with all of the gunmetal painted on. You can see how bright it is. It's definitely going to need quite a few washes, but this looks really good. I really like this paint, and highly suggest using this. And even if you're brushing it on, as long as you get the air version, the airbrush specific version, you can brush it on without thinning it or anything, and it works out great. I did touch up all the black with just regular Vallejo black, and so I just wanted to make sure I had a consistent base color going everywhere when I was painting. But for my dry brushing, I'm going to be using this ash gray and this just regular Vallejo black. I bought this ash gray a while back, and I don't know why I did, because I usually just mix my own grays, but this one's a little bit light, so I'm going to use this instead of using white, since I tend to use white paint a lot more than I use gray paint. So, but for dry brushing, just put a little bit on your brush, wipe away most of it, and then just go through and try to hit all of the edges. Since this was like a 1/6 scale model, the details kind of got lost when I scaled it down to 1/12, and so it's really hard to kind of pick up that rock detail. So I'm just going to try to emulate that with dry brushing. There is still detail there, it's just a lot of it is gone once you scale it down, and my printer isn't the best in the world, so I definitely lose some detail when I print things off myself. But I ended up switching to a larger makeup brush later because that little brush was just taking way too much time. And as you can see, I just keep lightening up my gray a little bit more at a time until it's overall pretty light here. This wasn't really what I was going for, but I knew I was going to do quite a few washes on this, so I was okay with it being a little bit more light. I'm gonna try this Nuln, was it Nuln oil? I don't know how you pronounce that, but, and this rattling grime. These are two that I see a bunch of 40K painters use, and I just wanted to try them out. I was walking around the store the other day and decided to go ahead and give them a try here. This Nuln oil is just pretty much a black wash. I don't know if there's that big of a difference from this and any other black wash I've used, but I mean, it went on fine and it dried pretty quick, so I guess those are positives for it. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't, I don't understand the hype for it. But after I got a few coats on it, I used a brush that was pretty dry to kind of sponge up some of that extra that got on the metal that I didn't want there. And I just let that dry for a couple hours maybe. I think it dried in like 30 minutes, but I just wanted to make sure it was fully dry before I moved on to any more steps. But this is what it looked like fully dry. I think this looks really good for the stone. I did add more washes later, but this is a really good spot if you wanted to stop here. It was still a little bit brighter than what I was going for, but I think it looked good overall. So what I'm gonna do now though is go and paint all of those metallic parts on the front with the same gunmetal color I was using earlier. I don't know what the paint scheme was supposed to be for this. His model, he has one posted that he digitally painted, and it looked good, but it just didn't really match any source material I've seen. So I just kind of tried to go with my own thing here, and that's mostly blacks and grays and silvers. But I did the same thing for the top for this whole process as well, and painted those panels that same gunmetal color. Pretty much everything I'm doing to the bottom, if I don't show the top, I'm probably doing the same thing up there as well. But here's everything after I got it all painted up and everything's dried. I need to go back and repaint the base black, but this is pretty much where this was probably where I needed to stop, but I kept going after this. And so for the metallic parts, I wanted to use this rattling, is it rattling grime? I don't know how to talk. For the bottom, or for the metallic parts, I was gonna use this rattling grime, and I did actually just go ahead and put this over the whole base. It's kind of like a brown wash mixed in with a black wash. The only thing with it is very dark, and it did pull pretty badly. Like anywhere I put it, it didn't move a whole lot. And so that might be good for some use cases, but for mine, I was not expecting that. So I was kind of stressing after I got this placed everywhere, but I really just put on too much of it, and I probably should have watered it down quite a bit, just especially being my first time using it. I don't know why I just decided to go full throttle with it, but I put it over the entire model and then stressed out about how bad everything looked after it dried. You can see how bad it pulls up. It just didn't move very much after I placed it, and I think that's on me. I think I should have added a little bit of water or something to it to help it out a little bit, but it just really stayed in the same spot I put it, which I'm not used to with washes. To fix this, I decided to just go ahead and dry brush on that same gunmetal color I used for the base coat. I just did a pretty heavy dry brush here just to try to bring back some of that metallic look. And it did work, and it ended up looking pretty good after I got, I did this, and then I did another dry brush later, but after I did this first one, I felt a lot better about it because it did look honestly pretty good. So I guess I should just trusted the 40K painters when they said to try this out. But it was just a really heavy dry brush on this with that makeup brush. Here's what it looked like after I got that dry brush on there, and you can see it looks pretty good. It does look a little bit weathered, but not too much, which was really what I was going for here. But I did come back later and do a little bit more to it. But before that, I decided to go ahead and try to do a little bit of painting on these lights. It would have been cool if I would have hollowed these out in the model when I printed it, but I didn't think about that. So now I'm just trying to do something to make them look like lights at all because they just look like bars there right now. So I did that to the top, and the bottom also had some lights, but all I did was make a really watered down gray, light gray, and just did a couple of coats of that on the very tip of the light. Here it is on the bottom too. It's a little bit easier to tell here. Lights on the front, I just did like pretty much a dot of light gray. But we're back to the rattling grime, And this time I watered it down quite a bit. It's mostly water at this point, and I'm just gonna do one thin coat over all the metallic parts. And so this was really, I kind of knew what I was doing now, so I decided to just try it again, but a lot thinner this time and a lot more watered down, and put it over the whole thing just to get a little bit more weathering. I didn't want this looking too dirty because it is Darth Vader, so he's not gonna be living in a dirty tank, but I wanted a little bit of wear and tear to it, make it look a little bit used. This is what all the metallics looked like after that. I did have to repaint these front panels, and I did the same wash on them, and I think they turned out really good. I kind of like how dirty they look, and overall it did work out pretty well. I do think it's a better wash than the known oil, than the oil one, just because this one gives a little bit of brown too. But make sure you thin it down, add lots of water, and do really light coats, and let it dry fully before you do another coat, because it will pull up and it will really ruin a model if you don't know what you're doing. But on the floor grate, I decided to add a little bit of a brown dry brush, make it look a little bit more dirty. Like I said before, though, you're never really going to see this, so I don't know why I went through all the trouble of adding a different paint job to it, but I did. So here's the top plate too. I haven't really done too much more to that. I gave it a dark wash and just left it alone. But for my final dry brush on this base, I'm going to use a steel color. This is quite a bit lighter than the other one I was using, and I'm just going to do a very, very light dry brushing over the whole thing with this, or over all the metallic parts with this. And this is really going to help bring out those edges and just really bring out all the details that were here that were kind of getting lost in the wash and the regular metallic color. So this is going to help bring everything out a little bit more, and I think this really brought the whole thing together. I was really excited about how the whole thing looked after this, and the metallic was definitely my favorite part of this whole model. Well, my favorite part of the base at least. But after that, I went and ruined it all by clear coating it with satin, Rust-Oleum satin, I think what it was. Satin spray paint is not satin, it's just gloss. Like, I don't know what the difference between this and gloss would be, because this was extremely shiny and I just immediately started panicking. I didn't know what to do to try to fix this. I was gonna try different finishes to put on top. I wanted to paint it on because I really didn't want to have to mask everything off, and I was just debating with myself what to do here, until eventually I just decided that I probably should just do it the right way and mask off all of the floor, and then do some flat clear coats, because I like how shiny the floor was, the actual black parts, but the rest of it I did not want this shiny. So I masked off everything that I didn't want to be flat, the metallics and the floor mainly, and did this for everything, which was extremely annoying. But after, I didn't get footage of the finish of that, but I did like 4 or 5 coats of flat and it looked way better. So I don't know where my footage went for these acrylic pieces, but I wanted to put some acrylic in the top and the bottom parts just so I could seal off everything, because my original plan was to put epoxy inside of it, or some kind of water. So I knew I had to waterproof everything except for the tank itself. And so what I did was I used a cutting wheel on my Dremel to cut out the rough shapes, and then I went back with like a sanding bit on my Dremel and cleaned up the edges. And this acrylic plates will go on the top and the bottom, so they're not really going to be seen. So I wasn't too worried about it getting perfectly smooth or anything. I just had to get the shapes to actually fit in there and be able to seal them up so they'd be waterproof. But I bought some frosted acrylic so I could save myself some time. But I didn't realize frosted acrylic is just a piece of like Scotch tape over a regular acrylic sheet. And so once I peeled off this masking tape, it just removed that as well. And so my frosted acrylic was just regular acrylic after that. Or I was annoyed because it was like $2 extra to get the frosted version for some reason, and it was just a piece of tape on top. So also the reason I use the masking tape is so, number one, I can mark it and draw on it and not worry about ruining the piece of acrylic. But number two, it helps keep the edges from chipping when you're doing the dremeling or cutting or anything like that when you put some tape over the top of it. So I decided to go ahead and sand down the piece of acrylic to get it to be more frosted and opaque. And so I started off with some 400 grit sandpaper, but you can see here the scuffs are pretty deep and not really what I was looking for. So I ended up coming back with like 800 to 1000 grit sandpaper to really get some fine scratches, so it would be pretty opaque. But as for the tube, I don't know where the video went like the other one, but I just bought a 3-inch wide acrylic tube. It was 2 millimeters thick, and it was like $20 for 2 of them on Amazon. I'll have the link for that below. But I just cut it with that cutting wheel on my Dremel. I used a piece of 220 grit sandpaper and then 400 grit sandpaper on the edge that I cut to keep it from being sharp and help it not slice my finger in the future when I'm messing with this. And also help level it out a little bit, so when I glue it down, it'll be pretty level. So here's the top piece after I glued that acrylic in. I'm sorry the light looks bad on this part. I think I filmed this at like 2 in the morning. So here's the top piece. I glued that acrylic in. You can see how opaque it was. Like I said, I started off with 400 grit and then used 800 and then I think 1000. And that way I can get tiny scratches to make it opaque and not really, you can't really tell that I sanded it just by looking at it. But here's the piece I made for that bottom plate as well. Like I said earlier, I had to cut out that grate that was there originally, and so I had to 3D model this little cylinder to glue the acrylic into, and then I could glue this whole setup into the bottom plate later. So for all my gluing on this acrylic, I'm using JB Weld Clear Weld. This stuff really does set up in 5 minutes like it says on the bottle. So make sure that whenever you mix this up, you're ready to start placing it immediately, because I did have it dry out in the middle of me gluing these together quite a few times. But like I said, this bottom plate, my plan is to just glue it into this actual bottom base plate, and then I'm gonna of course fill in all the gaps with some of that epoxy. That way I can get this thing completely waterproof, and so I can not do anything with that because I end up not using the epoxy. But my plan here was still to use the epoxy, so I was making everything as waterproof as possible. And then you can see I made it so that this floor grate piece fits in perfectly, so I can just glue that down to the acrylic sheet. For printing off the Vaders, I wanted to try something new here, so I printed them in like a beige resin. And as you can see, they turned out pretty orangey red. Like they were a little bit too bright, and I really wanted this guy pretty pale in order to match what he looks like in the show. I hollowed out the model to make sure that I could add some wires into him later. I wanted to add the wires for the tank. I wanted to run them through his body so that way they could be pretty well hidden. But here's how he scales next to the regular like Black Series Anakin. I only have the episode 2 one from Black Series, and you can see he looks a little bit small, but he looks more realistic, I think, in my opinion, to what size he would actually be. So I was pretty happy with this scale, and this is just scaled down 50% from the regular model. So I'm gonna start off by doing some base coats of this basic skin tone. I'm gonna not do any primer on him just because I don't want to cover up that resin. But here's what he looked like after about 3 or 4 coats of that basic skin tone, and you can see he's still very orange. The skin tone didn't really bring that down at all. If anything, it made it a little bit more orange than he was originally. And so I was trying to work out a plan here. I also got tired of seeing 3 naked Anakin, so I painted on some his trunks on all of these. So for the trunks, I just used a basic Vallejo black. And then for the belt, I used that regular gunmetal color on the metal parts of his belt. But mostly his belt was this skin tone, or this flesh color. This was just a little bit darker. The leather stood out against the trunks pretty harshly, and so I wanted to use something just a little bit darker. So I stuck with that flesh tone for most of the straps and stuff like that on his body. This is the second version that I did, and what I did here was I added like 1 drop of dark blue into the flesh tone when I was mixing it up, and that helped bring down that harsh like orange and red color quite a bit. He was still very tan, but it helped to bring him down quite a bit, and so he looked a little bit better. But then here's the third version, and this is with a little bit of blue mixed into the skin tone, and then I took that blue, watered it down quite a bit, and did a wash over the whole body with that. And you can see this is getting a lot closer to what he looks like in the show, and you can see it's just watered down blue. I just did a full wash over him and helped bring down some of that orange, and this looks so much better. So I think that's the way to go, is just add a little bit of blue to my skin tones to help bring that down quite a bit. So what I like to do when especially when I'm messing with skin tones, is I pull up the old color wheel, and anytime that I see that he may be too red, I'll add in a little bit of green, or if he's too yellow, add in a little blue or purple. And that helps kind of tone down, make those colors more neutral, since they're opposites. I'm not really good with color theory, but this helps me out a lot, especially when messing with skin tones, is just add a little bit of whatever the opposite color is, and it'll bring it down a little bit, if that makes any sense. So I'm dabbing off all this extra blue that I did the wash for, and you can already see he's looking a lot more pale, a lot more natural, I guess, or natural to Darth Vader, I guess. But I just did a few coats of this, and then I'd use a dry brush to kind of dab off all the excess paint where I couldn't reach, just because I didn't want that blue to really settle in anywhere. Kind of textured. But here's what he looked like after a couple of washes of blue. But I just wanted to make sure I got a really good base skin tone before I started trying to actually add in details or anything like that. So for his basic skin tone, I'm going to add the regular skin tone I was using, and then a little bit of this Barbarian Flesh. I like this one because it's a little bit more tan, a little bit more red, and so it helps. The basic skin tone can be too pale sometimes, so especially for this first layer, I'm going to go for something a little bit more natural. So I'll just add in like a drop or two of that Barbarian Flesh. You don't need much. And then I'm just going to do one thin coat of this over his entire body. When I'm doing washes or painting anything, I like to do it in sections. So we're just going to focus on the main torso here and just try to get one really light coat over him. Try to blend all of that wash and skin tone together, so we got one consistent color here. But after that's had an hour or two to dry, I make sure to clear coat after each step, just with the Mr. Hobby Super Clear. And you can see I started trying to experiment on some of these. This guy, I gave him a red wash to see if I can bring out some of that scarring. This one I gave a red wash, but I went way lighter on the red wash. And you can see this looks pretty cool, but he's still too tan, maybe a little bit too dark. But I'm really just adding this red wash to try to get into those scars and everything on his body. So that way I don't have to go in and do them all individually. I can just give him a wash, and hopefully when I do another layer of skin tone, it'll help bring out some of that detail. But for my red wash, I'm just using this Citadel Red and just a little bit of black, just barely any black, to try to darken it up a little bit, because these are scars and not open wounds, so you don't want them looking bright red. That'll look like he has a bunch of cuts and stuff on him. I want the red to be a little bit darker so that settles in. It looks more like scar damage, which will look a little bit more natural when I have him in the tank. So one more time with the skin tone, but this time I'm gonna add a little bit of white just to try to pale it up a little bit, or make him a little bit more pale, and do a really thin coat of that. And this is what he looked like after that coat. He looks a lot better here. I'm really happy with how this turned out. Besides the bad light, this was from the video at like 2 a.m. so lighting's bad here, but I've ruined my trunks as well, so I'm going to repaint those. But I believe my final skin tone was this flesh tone from Citadel, Flayed One Flesh, and then I added in a little bit of white to bring it down a little bit, and then I just added in just a tad bit of blue. Like I said though, it's just kind of experimenting here. I was just whipping out all the skin tones I have to try to get something that looked pretty screen accurate, and I think this is the closest I got right here. And I also went back with that red wash and kind of targeted more areas versus just doing a full wash, just trying to get into those deep cuts and stuff like that. Also, I added a really thin blue wash around his eyes, and then went back and added a really thin red wash around his eyes, just to make him look really tired and angry. Try to bring out some of that detail around there. I used this brown for all of the straps still, and then I used black on all of the parts that are gonna be metallic later, just because you want a black undertone for silver especially, and that helps the silver really pop. But now I can go back with that. I can go in and punch in all these metallic details with the gunmetal. And I think it took like 2 coats to get everything pretty consistent. So it's just a lot of trying to hit those really small metallic bits all over him. So you can see the comparison here between the two. I think the one without the silver makes his skin tone look a lot darker. Here he is after I'm done painting all that silver on him, and this guy was pretty much done. I just had to hit the eyes real quick, but you can see all those details punched in and they look amazing on the model, and I'm really glad that I could actually get this scaled down to 1/12. But for the eyes, I mixed in a light gray with some flesh tone and just did just to paint his eyes with that, and then I came in with the red and did my actual pupils or irises, whatever the colored part of your eyes is. I painted those red, and then I came back with yellow and painted an even smaller circle. You can see here, super zoomed in. His eyes are very small, so this was taking a lot of concentration to get this done. But after I punched in that yellow, I came back and added his actual pupils with the black. I wasn't able to get as much detail here. Like I said, it was really small, but I think they turned out pretty good, and you can't even really see his eyes outside the tank, so they're good enough to work for now. They also, I've seen water slides for Sith eyes and stuff like that, and those work out pretty well too. So if you're scared about painting eyes, you could always try out those, and they look pretty good as well. But here's the straps that came with the model, scaled down, of course, but I had to glue these in and just paint them up. This tube coming out of his mouth was very small, so, or at least the connection point was very small, so it was definitely stressful adding those. But this ring came on the model too, and it's meant to connect to the top piece, and then you connect the two straps holding him to this ring, and then you connect this tube to the top piece as well. But I really didn't have anywhere to connect that, so I just ended up drilling a hole in that kind of donut looking shape and then just gluing the tube there. It all makes sense in a minute, but this is what the straps look like before they're painted. You can see how tiny those pegs are in 1/12, and especially the ones that peg into the body. It was kind of hard to tell which one of these go where. I think I messed up one of these and glued it in the wrong spot, but they're different sizes at the tip, so if I would have went back and looked at the model, I probably could have figured it out, but I ended up getting it all together eventually. You can see how tiny that peg is in the tube as well. It was definitely a pain to glue this all down, but I used this JB Weld plastic bonder, and this stuff works really good, so I always suggest this if you want something to stay permanently attached. So this is the lights I'm going to use for the base. These are called COB lights, COB. They're just LEDs, but these ones are a little bit fancier than your normal kind of LED strips in the sense that they're a little bit brighter, they last a little bit longer, and they're also a little bit more expensive. But these ones also had a radio frequency connector for the remote, so that way I could glue this into the base and not have to worry about having line of sight to the actual controller, so that I could actually just did that to seal everything up so you never see the connections at all, or you don't see anything poking out, if that makes any sense. I did a lot of research on this, and I probably could have still bought better lights, but these ones were only like $25 on Amazon, and so I was going all in for this. I don't have the link for these either, but if you search up COB lights or COB LED lights, you can find some on Amazon, and just make sure they say radio frequency controller or radio controller or something like that. But the link for this one disappeared. I don't know if they got shut down or what happened, but I don't have the link for this one. But you can see here, I just glued the lights on the inside, or kind of coiled those around. And for my base, I didn't really have room because the lights were using a regular USB, which was too big, and also the cable was too short. So what I did is I wired one of these micro USBs for power, and then I could just run the lights like normal and use a micro USB versus the regular USB. But here's what it looks like in the base. It's super bright. I really like these lights, and I'll probably use them for more of my setups later because these are so much better than just the generic cheapo LEDs. Like, I like these a lot better. I do wish it had like a slower pulse function, because it just kind of has a bright flash, and there's no way to set the white to pulse. I had some complaints here, but they were cheap and easy to use, so I can't have too many. Here's my micro USB just with the red and black connectors, and you can just slide this in the hole back here, or this is what I made to actually work with these. And then I had to use some tweezers to actually get them through the hole completely, but I just slid this in the back and then glued it in with some super glue, and it held perfectly, and it's pretty hidden in the back there. But I glued that, I'm gonna glue that controller down But here is the red and black wires for power, and then I can take this actual power cable coming off of the LEDs and just snip it here. I can just solder the wires together, and then they're gonna I'll be able to use the micro USB versus a regular USB for the power. But you can see here, once I snip the actual cord, the red and black wires just go to red and black. It's really simple for these power cords, and so I wasn't too worried about this. Especially with power, you want to be really careful, but I wasn't too worried about these. It was a simple job. But I'm gonna glue the controller down right there with some hot glue. This is really just to keep it in place, nothing too fancy. I just want this to stay here and not rattle around when I move this around in the future, or if I move it too far, or if I move it around, I don't want this to pop loose and mess anything up. So I'm just adding a bit of super glue or hot glue wherever I need to in here to keep everything in place and make sure everything stays together for the long run. But after I've hot glued everything into place and keeping everything locked in, I actually went to install the lights. And they have this double-sided tape on here or whatever to keep them stuck on, but it wasn't doing a very good job on this printed piece. And so I just put a little dab of super glue on here around the rim, every probably 4 dabs or whatever, just to keep it locked into certain places so it wouldn't come loose, because I don't want that strip coming off and then in the future you just see the strip down there. And I actually went back and added hot glue too to keep it all locked in. But you can see here I glued the ring onto the straps and drilled a hole in the ring and glued that tube in. So everything's glued to this ring, and then I took the ring and glued it to that piece of acrylic straight in the middle. And so he's all locked in now, and he's well, he probably could break off pretty easily, but he's all locked in and good to go. Or 5 coats of flat. So I ran these wires through his body. I needed 4 wires to connect the top LEDs to the bottom LEDs, and so I ran 2 in each leg, just through the holes in the back and up through the legs. And so that way I can have these wires pretty well hidden. And I wanted to use all black wires, but I ran out of all black wires after this. And I really didn't want to order more and wait. So on my other one, I used 1 black, 1 blue wire for each. Because the way the LED connects is you have a blue, green, red, and power connector on each strip, like for each connection. And so I needed 4 wires, and I needed to be able to tell the difference between the wires. So for my all black wires, I just went ahead and stripped some and went ahead and pre-tinned them so that way I could tell the difference. But for this one, since I ran out of black wires, I used a black and a blue, and I just came back and painted the blue wire later. And this worked out way better because I could keep a chart on my desk of just like left leg blue wire connects to red, left leg black wire connects to green, if that makes any sense. I just had to make sure I could tell the wires apart and make sure that the same wire that's connecting in the top is connecting in the bottom. And it took a bit of a trial and error. And if you do this wrong, I don't think you're going to break anything. You just turn on your LEDs, and if one color doesn't work, then you know you got that wire wrong. But more likely 2 colors wouldn't work, and you just need to switch those 2 wires. But you can see here I drilled a hole through the top of this top plate and through that ring so I could keep it pretty well hidden, and then just ran the wires through those holes and hot glued those down so they stay in place. I also filled in his body where the wires were going through, just the holes, with some hot glue. I just wanted to make sure everything is staying in place and locked in, so I made sure to put in hot glue anywhere there was a hole. I ran the wires through the top plate on my second one, but on my first one I ran them through the bottom plate as well. So we're kind of moving at a different pace on both of these now, but one's pretty close to being done, and this one I actually drilled a hole in the top of these acrylic, or in the top plates, just because I thought I was going to add resin, like I said, and so I needed somewhere to pour it. And when I did, I snapped this tube off, but I just had to reprint one and glue it on there. But you can see this hole, I got in there pretty clean and end up never actually using, so, but at least the hole was pretty clean whenever I got it through. To make it easier on myself, before I fully installed these LEDs, I actually soldered a corresponding wire to each color I need, so that way I can actually just connect these wires together and then glue them in, versus having to try to solder these wires to the actual LEDs while everything's installed. It just seemed way easier this way, and I guess it was easier this way. It probably would have been easier if I cut my wires longer, but you can see here, these are the 4 connections you need, and so I just soldered a corresponding wire to each one of those, so that way when I come back to do this later, I'll know which wire goes to which. This was just a lot of sitting here trying to think of ways to make this as easy as possible, because I'm not very good at soldering, and I'm especially not very good at planning ahead. So this is just what seemed easiest to me. But on the base plate here, I drilled 4 tiny holes to run the wires through. It's gonna be opposite of this, but I just wanted to show the hole is just big enough for this wire to fit through. And I tried to drill it into corners and stuff, so that way it's pretty hidden from the bottom or from outside. So like here, you can't even tell there was holes down there. It just looks like the wires run into the grates. So here's everything installed. The top part, you can see I used a ton of hot glue just to try to keep everything locked into place. And I had to use that clear epoxy to glue this top plate, or this top, it's not a base, I guess top cover onto this acrylic tube. And then I have all my wires here, and I can actually just run them through the holes in the base to connect to the bottom. It's really a lot of extra effort to try to keep everything as hidden as possible, but I think it was worth it because there's only one like wire coming out of the whole thing, and so I think all this effort was worth it. But man, it was really stressful. I was really worried that I was gonna glue something down and have it messed up and then have to retake it all apart. But this was the clear weld I was using on all the acrylics. Anything acrylic, I used this clear JB weld, just in case I messed up and got sloppy. You wouldn't really mess anything up too bad. But you can see this is my testing one. This is my test run one, and so my wiring isn't as pretty here, and my hot glue is not as pretty as well. But I got everything put together and wanted to test him out to make sure it all still worked, and so plugged him into the back. And you can see this cord just plugs in and out, and there's no kind of give or anything, so the super glue is really holding. But you can see it all worked out pretty well here. It's very exciting to have this far. I'd been working on this for like 2 weeks at this point, and so it was just nice to have it all put together like this. So here's the part where I kind of messed everything up on this one. So I wanted to pour the epoxy, but I didn't really think about it that much about how it would actually look in there. But I went through all the trouble of spending $60, $70 on epoxy and using my pressure pot to get all the bubbles out and doing this pour as clean as possible, and ended up immediately realizing how bad of an idea this was when it got to actually showing Vader. So the thing with pouring epoxy or anything in these tubes is there's a lot of light refraction, and that's how light is hitting these tubes with the liquid inside and it's making it look wider. He looks like a Squidward from the episode where he ate all the Krabby Patties. Hang on, I'm gonna read a definition on light refraction because I'm mad that I didn't think about how bad this would go. You know, we talked about color wheel theory or whatever. Now we're gonna talk about light refraction. Light refraction is the bending of light rays as they pass from one medium to another, therefore by changing the path of the rays. And so whenever it's like looking into water when there's something down at the bottom and it looks way bigger than it actually is, or it looks further away. That's what this tube did to Anakin, but it made him thick. So is about what the light did to me here. And I was kind of panicking at this point. I just decided to fill him up. I just wanted to see how it looked. I knew I was beyond the point of return here. So you can see though how much he changes, and I think I could have avoided this like 2 ways. One, if I printed the model way thinner, then whenever when his shape changes inside this tube, he would look normal, but he'd look weird in real life, if that makes sense. Just make him a lot thinner. The second way is I could have maybe glued a piece of acrylic to his back or something, and that way the light would bounce off more naturally. Like whenever somebody does a pour in a box or something and it doesn't really look that messed up. I think that that's the light reflecting off the back and making it look a little bit more normal. I don't know though, and I'm pissed I didn't think about it a little bit harder before I started pouring this. But I was able to salvage this. I just turned him upside down and let all of this resin drain out, and then I took a little bit of, or quite a bit of rubbing alcohol or isopropyl alcohol, like 90%, and just poured a bunch of that in here and like sloshed it around and dumped that out. I did that about 2 or 3 times, and that messes up the paint usually, but I was very careful not to touch any of the painted parts while I was doing that. And so that way when it fully dried after 2 or 3 days, the paint hadn't chipped or anything like that, and it hadn't smeared. So it came out looking okay, but was definitely upset I had spent this much money on resin and then not able to use it at all. But you can see just the difference here in the sizes. It's kind of crazy, but this would have been cool if it worked. But here's the one that I didn't mess with, and I went ahead and glued a new piece of acrylic on top of the old one to cover up that hole. I don't know why I did this. I just decided that I wanted the light to be hitting him pretty even from the top, so I just went ahead and filled that in. But here's all my wiring and my bad hot glue job. And for the top and bottom plates, I bought this like mirror sticker. So that way maybe I could reflect a little bit more light. None of the light would get lost. And so I just stuck that onto the top plate. But you can see here it's super clear. I was really surprised. I thought it'd be kind of garbage, but it really wasn't. But it really didn't do anything. So I guess it was. There's only a couple bucks though, and I decided to just go ahead and do it on the bottom plate as well because I already bought it, so might as well use it. But I used that JB Weld, the black one, to glue this top plate on, and then I used the JB Weld to glue the bottom plate on. I actually went out. I had to alter this plate a little bit from my original design to give it a little bit more room, and I went ahead and added my logo. Not really my logo, but I guess my channel name to the bottom. I got a new bamboo printer, and so I wanted to try out the dual filaments, and so I added my name on the bottom. It turned out really well, so that was really cool to have that on the bottom, and I'm really impressed with this printer. But after that, I think this guy is all done, and we can take a final look at him. Sorry for the shaky cam there. I tried out a couple of fancier shots with this guy, but I was really excited about this, and especially getting him a dark room, flipping on that light. It was so cool. But here's a few comparison shots of him with some Anakins and some Vaders and Kenobi that I have laying around. This Obi-Wan is actually one of my first SHF Star Wars figures, and I really like it a lot. I did swap the head for the Black Series one though. That one's just better. And I have that neck peg for free over on my Colts 3D if you want that to do the head swap as well. But really excited about how this turned out, and I'm really interested in trying to find a good spot for him to chill out on the display because I want him pretty front and center. Let me know if you want to see more kind of display pieces like this, and I know this is a really long video, and I appreciate y'all watching the whole thing. And to show my appreciation, I would like to give away one of the extra Vader bodies I made. This one in particular, I'm not giving away the full thing because this took way too long. I did not make a third one, but I would like to give away this extra Vader I have. So if you want this for free, you can follow me over on Instagram, like my post of this. I have a post of this Vader. Go like that, and just let me know down in the comments of that post what your favorite appearance of Darth Vader outside the movies is. So like any video game or TV show or audio drama, whatever your favorite one is, go ahead and let me know that in the comments of that Instagram post, and I'll pick somebody random to give this away to. So I will pick somebody on the 17th. On the 17th, I'll pick somebody from those comments for that specific prompt, and I'll message you and we'll send it your way. US only, shipping from and to the US is kind of weird right now, so if you're in the United States, please go ahead and let me know. Or I'll do giveaways in the future and try to open it up a little bit more. I haven't really shipped internationally, so I'm kind of worried about trying that out for this first one. But go ahead and let me know something there. And once again, thanks for watching this really long video. I really appreciate it, and hopefully I see you guys next time. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know what you think. And once again, thanks for watching. Bye, guys.